Monotheistic ideals and concepts have been constantly appearing from the dawn of civilization, with the first generally accepted case of monotheistic worship and religion being viewed in ancient Egypt around 1300 BC. What is thought to be the first monotheist and monotheistic religion was that of Akhenaten, who abolished all other gods in exchange for a single god of ancient Egypt, Aten. The ideas of monotheism and their motifs exist in nearly every culture, from Native American to European to Asian to East Asian to African to Middle Eastern. Ancient Greco-Roman culture is certainly not an exception. One of the prevalent philosophers, thinkers, and personalities of antiquity is Aristotle. He is hailed as the bastion of Western thought and one of the most important philosophers of all time. Most scholars definitely write him down as one of the different points of view on theology of his time. In his book, Metaphysics, at one point he describes the life unmoved mover is self-contemplative thought. He further describes it in the book, now nothing is moved at random, but there must always be something present to move it. As a matter of fact, a thing moves in one way by nature and another by force or through influence of reason or something else. This concept of a fundamental force behind everything which causes move and change is one of the fundamentals of some forms of monotheism. Aristotle further describes that there is something which moves without being moved, being eternal substance and actuality. We say, therefore, that God is a living being, eternal, most good, so that life and duration continuous and eternal belong to God, for this is God. End quote. So what this describes is a sort of creator that is an unmoved mover, beyond the realms of space and time and unperceivable. He is different from the humanized God, according to some forms of monotheism, or the polytheistic human gods that were perceived at his time. This could be found to later inspire certain rationalist theists, who later went on to establish certain schools of thought and theology. But the evidence is clear that he had some form of belief in some grand creator, which is actually not surprising, seeing as one of his teachers was Plato, who was taught by Socrates. Socrates is one of the other main philosophers known throughout history. His ideals and beliefs are hard to place, as most of it was lost by Plato's own bias and putting words into Socrates' mouth. However, from the early works of Plato, we can see a clear pattern of belief in the divine. For Socrates, Socrates' wisdom was known throughout the ancient world, with at one point the oracle at Delphi said that no man was wiser than him at the time. The same influence of him extends to today, with the Socratic method attributed to him being the basis of scientific and philosophical thought. Throughout the early works of Plato, we see a clear connection to the divine and monotheistic beliefs in Socrates. The evidence of this is clear with different statements attributed to him, his trial leading to death, and others' perception of him. Firstly, we have to examine the reason he was put to trial and death in the first place. Though there were many political reasons behind his sentencing, he was originally accused of corrupting the youth and dishonoring the Athenian gods, accused of atheism, or rather a daimonic sign or divine voice which he claimed came from some sort of creator or god. He was often recorded to not refer to multiple gods whenever he spoke of the divine, instead of speaking of the singular form of God. One of the greatest evidences in favor of the monotheistic beliefs of Socrates is his speech to the Athenian people when he was put to trial. As quoted from the dialogues of Plato, "O men of Athens, know that God is only wise, and by his answer he intends to show that wisdom of men is worth little or nothing. And so I go about the world obedient to the one God, and search and make inquiry into the wisdom of any one, whether citizen or stranger, who appears to be wise, and if he is not wise, then I show him that he is not wise. And my occupation quite absorbs me, and I have no time to give attention to any public matter or interest, or to any concern of my own, but rather I am in utter poverty by reason of my devotion to the one God." This is a clear sign that he had a devout belief in one God. With all these noted events, some of the major Abrahamic religions have adopted Socrates as a prophet and this mystical side of him. In fact, Benjamin Franklin compared him to Jesus, saying that you must follow the paths of Socrates and Jesus. Furthermore, beyond singular figures, the ideals of accountability, afterlife, and the original sin are present in Greco-Roman mythology. Accountability and the afterlife are apparent with the Roman and Greek perception of the underworld in Hades, with some semblance of hell there. The original sin and subsequent flood are both apparent in the story of Pandora, sculpted by the gods, who unleashes all evils into the world from a box, similar to the apple of Eden, which caused man to fall from heaven. The story also includes a flood Zeus sent to wipe out humanity, similar to that of Noah and the flood, which God sent to rid man of disbelief. To conclude, both present in Greco-Roman philosophy and mythology, in both figures and literature, the belief in monotheistic ideals, concepts, and religion has its traces and presence, which later seeped into Abrahamic religion and thought. This shows how ancient world religions and theology are still relevant in the modern era.